When it comes to thinking about our writing, I think it's very easy to get very centered on our specific poems, our specific writing, what it means for us, ourselves as the person writing the piece. And I think that's a really important factor. Some pieces that we write are entirely for us. We are the audience. We are the person that the poem is truly for. Once we start thinking about collections and even publication, maybe even just for individual poems, I think in a lot of ways there's almost a letting go because you're basically saying, hey, I've made this piece for the world. I'm okay with others taking in this piece, adding their own interpretations to it, using it for their own needs and things like that. And I think that's a real goal for poetry, honestly. I think that if we really view our work as something that is of benefit to others, then I think the only thing we can really push for is trying to make sure that others can take that benefit and gift that we have. So we have to really be great advocates for our work because it makes a difference in people's lives. I think if we really believe that, then we have to do whatever it takes to get our work out there. What that also means, though, is we need to start considering the impact that our work has on the lives of others, and we need to be thinking about what is the benefit? How am I using my work as a gift for other people? And so that's something that I want to discuss a little bit today. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, guys. Welcome to the Versus Live. This is our Tuesday show. You typically around 9:30, 9:45 p.m. on Tuesdays, New York time. We take a look at an aspect of poetry talk, craft talk, writing talk, and just go a little bit further. And today I want to talk about this idea that our writing is a gift to others. When we're putting together poetry collections, it's a gift to others. But what exactly are the things that we're giving? And this can take on so many different aspects of benefit to our reader. For instance, something that we've talked about before, even just from like an entertainment aspect. If you look at something like Netflix, maybe you have a Netflix subscription or a Hulu subscription or something like that. What are you giving to people? What is Netflix giving to people? Well, you can make the argument that one of the things that Netflix is doing is it's giving entertainment to people. It's helping people solve the problem of, oh, I'm at home on maybe a Friday night or a Saturday night and I don't know what to do, or maybe a random night. I don't know what to do. Oh, well, I can watch this show. It can also help with this a sense of belonging. Like, oh, everyone at work or all of my friends are watching this show. I haven't seen it before. I feel like I'm the last person in the world to see it. I should probably watch this thing. So it can tie into people's sense, their sense of belonging. A lot of this has to do, if you think of like your Maslow hierarchy of needs, for those of you who took some psych classes, and we've mentioned this before. These aren't new concepts on the channel, but just things that I do think are helpful to think about. You know, at your base level, you know, you have your needs that are related to like food, and then above that, then you have like shelter, and then above that, you know, you have your sense of like relationships, and then you move higher and higher, and then you get into like aspects of, for instance, like identity and like self-actualization, you know, becoming what the type of person you feel like you become. These are all different needs, and when we think of needs, we can also think of them as like pain points. You know, we're trying to solve problems, and I think that poetry is a way that we can solve problems in people's lives, similar to maybe things like what Netflix is doing. Like, oh, everyone's read this book. I think you saw that a lot, like for instance with the like Harry Potter. For those of you growing up, you know, like 10, 15 years ago, why is everyone reading Harry Potter? I think a part of it was also just the fact everyone else was reading Harry Potter. So it was like, oh, everyone's reading Harry Potter, I need to read Harry Potter, you know? But then there's also the aspect, too, that, like, you know, some people were looking for, I really enjoy reading fantasy and wizardry, but Lord of the Rings isn't quite my jam. I want something focusing on maybe like younger characters, something like that. Well, then, you know, Harry Potter can fit that that pain point or that need, you know. So going back to our own poetry collection, I think something that we can really think about is what is the specific pain point that we're solving. Okay, we're probably not using our poetry book as a way to solve world hunger. Although maybe you could find a way to do that. Maybe, for instance, if you found a way to get involved like with an organization that's dedicated to helping out with, you know, like a food pantry. Like maybe there's like donations, or maybe you do special things that are connected to that. You know, so then you're tied into that mission. Or maybe, for instance, you're tied to like a homeless shelter, so maybe you're tied into the shelter aspect. Okay. What are some other things that we can think about too? We could be tying into, for instance, people's sense of belonging with specific communities. To give an example, if you identify a certain way, then maybe you think it's also important to read books that other people who identify the same way. Like, for instance, I think you see this, for instance, in the black community. You see a lot of like, you know, a lot of emphasis on like Broaden. You see a lot of emphasis on contemporary young writers. Very biased because I just got back from like the Cave Canem retreat, but like people really trying to stay in tune with other, you know, black writers doing and really emphasizing them. Or for instance, if you're in the Asian community, paying attention to like Asian writers, or if you're in like the gay community, focusing on like gay and lesbian writers and things like that, you know. So I think, you know, building awareness, because I think it can highlight that sense of community. But I think books can also take on other roles as well. So for instance, sometimes we're using books as status symbols. I think, you know, if you think about in your own, let's say that you have your house and maybe you just moved somewhere and like you're like, I want to put a book on like my coffee table. What book are you putting on your coffee table? What book do you want to let other people know you're reading? You know, maybe you don't think like that, but most likely if you're watching this, some of you may be thinking about this. Like, what are things that I can put out and display that other people can immediately identify something about me and either connect with it or distance themselves? Because I think when we look at identity, this is a key aspect, is that when we use tools to show identity, we are also basically giving people a choice to see that aspect of our identity and move towards it themselves or to move away from it. You can see this, for instance, in the US, we're moving towards an election cycle. So you're going to see all kinds of stuff, all kinds of symbolism associated with either side. And it's going to either create distance between the side, be like, oh, it's almost like othering, right? Like, that's the other side. I don't agree with that side, so I'm going to stay away from it. Or it's going to create community, because people who agree with it, of whatever the symbol may be, they'll be like, oh, this is someone that has similar views to me. Isn't that funny? It doesn't usually take much. Usually it just takes, you know, especially if someone's a complete stranger, you see one symbol and you're like, yeah, I connect with that. You know, for instance, I grew up in Philadelphia, and a lot of people from Philadelphia, whatever the sport team is, you just support the Philadelphia sports team. You know, you may not even like the sport, but it's like, hey, if the Phillies are winning, I'm going to be a Phillies fan. You know, if the Flyers are winning, I'm going to be a Flyers fan. If the Eagles are winning, I'm going to be Eagles. Like, you know, whatever the team is. So I don't live in Philadelphia right now. So what are some things that I do to demonstrate that? Because Philadelphia is still something that's important to me. Well, for instance, on my computer, you know, you can see there's a Liberty Bell. From a poetry symbol, you can see there's like, I got some Cave Canem stickers. So there's some Cave Canem stickers on there. These are things that are important to me. Think about for your own laptop. What are the stickers you've put on your laptop? You know, so these are all things. Why are we doing this? We're doing this to show our affinity to things to other people. We're trying to let people other know, hey, I identify with this. This is something that's important to me. I don't care if you're with it or I don't care if you're against it, but I am going to let you know that this is something that is important to me. So going back to our poetry discussion. So you have a book out, or you're thinking of putting a book out. How can your poetry book speak to these sorts of conversations? How can my poetry book, if people if I make a poetry book and someone reads it and they put it on their coffee table, what are the things that I can help them demonstrate about themselves to other people? Okay, so for instance, if maybe I combine, my reader is really obsessed with like aesthetics, so maybe they're really into like design. So that means that maybe I need the cover of my poetry book to be really appealing aesthetically. It needs to use a lot of strong design principles. I'm not a designer, but I watch a lot of content around design. It's like just like watching all the little hacks and tricks that people do with design. Like for instance, if you have like shapes, that are technically all the same size, sometimes you have to modify the shapes to make them. Just because two shapes may be the same size doesn't mean that they look like they're always the same size. Like a triangle might look a little bit smaller than like a circle, so you have to adjust some things about the triangle to make it look like it's the same size as the circle, which actually end up making it maybe a little bit bigger, and things like that. There's all kind of little tricks like that. Anyways, so if someone buys my poetry book, what can I do to help them show what's important to them to other people? Okay, so like for instance, if dogs are a really popular topic, I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest dog fan, but I think going back to growing up in Philly, we were surrounded by like Rottweilers and Pit Bulls, and some of them involved in like dog fights and stuff like that. And so I didn't really grow up with the best like image of dogs personally, so I probably wouldn't go that route. But if I'm imagining that, okay, the person that is reading my book really likes dogs, so maybe I'm gonna tie in my collection or the cover of my collection to dogs in some way, so they can demonstrate that to people. Alright guys, our co-host just arrived, so give me 1 second to get settled, then we will continue our discussion. Be right there.
Facts are important, but like emotional truth that poets get at is the most exciting and like maybe the most truthful.
When I read it in this space, when I bring it to this audience, why do I want to do that today, here, now? Something I think I'm doing a lot in my work is giving a certain amount to be able to see where this boat is going and where the waters are taking it, but not trying to paint the full landscape. Not only because I don't want to share it, but because I don't know if even I want to go there yet myself. So I'm wondering how you handle that, and if it's scary at any points for you, or how you deal with that scariness.
Yeah. Well, first, so do you feel that way about Cruel? God,
yeah. I mean, a very common reflection I get from my work is, people are like, I don't know exactly what's going on, but I feel a lot of things. And that's kind of a lot of just my passion in art. Like, I don't always want to know exactly what's going on, but when I apply it personally, then I'm willing to approach what I'm willing to approach in the manner of which, or the manner and depth in which I'm willing to go into it, And and we talked about this too, it's a long game of poetry, right? Things I'm tapping into now with Cruel, I surely will keep writing about, and surely I hope that, not that I'll reveal more, but that I'll discuss.
All right, we're back. Thanks for your patience, guys.
Yo.
Who are you?
What's up?
Why are you in my house?
It's just me. I came in by myself. I knocked a couple times, and I was just like, oh, the door is open. I'll come. Good note for later on if I'm just like, hey man, there's a house to rob. It's just like Jeff. If he's on stream.
Oh yeah, just leave the door unlocked all the time. I don't actually leave the door unlocked all the time.
Other than that, you guys don't even know he lives on 124 Sycamore Road.
That's my favorite Simpsons episode. What is it? 123 Fig Street. I'm gonna adjust the camera really quick. Delmar's here. What's up, Delmar? Always good to see you, sir. Delmar's doing all kinds of work on the socials. I know, putting out all kinds of videos and things. It's one of art that reflects the times and different identities. You're 100% right. Sometimes I say things that are like people connect.
Every once in a while, it's like,
not
man,
very often, but once in a while,
I can do it. Yeah, man.
So with that, I'll talk to you from up here. So again, we were talking about how to use books as as like a way to connect with. We gave an example. So for instance, if I wanted to connect my book with like to show like a connection with like food. You know, something I might do with my book is I might try to do like a partnership with like a food pantry or something like that. So it's like, oh, you buy this book, then I'll donate, you know, a certain percentage. So then when people buy the book, they'll be like, oh well, I'm helping also with, you know, food and like food distribution for people and things like that.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite route, I'll be honest. I think the donation thing, it's one of those things like it's nice, but I don't think that's ever going to be something that is like a game changer. Like, wow, I wasn't going to buy this book, but because they're giving it 10% to the one place, now I'm going to buy it. Like, I don't know if it's quite strong enough to really lead to a purchase. It's more kind of just like a nice little add-on.
I don't know that. I think you have to look at like the motives behind purchasing something. So I think that I don't know if I would say it's strong enough to lead to a purchase from somebody who absolutely wouldn't have been interested in your work prior. You know what I mean? And so, which is just to say that if your incentive behind, or if the incentive that you're giving somebody for buying your book is this other side good cause, I think even if they participate in buying the book because of the good cause, like A, that's not going to be a lot, but B, I don't think that leads people to really enjoying your work like itself. Right. Yeah. Man, years ago, actually, we were at this award show in Akron, and it was a really beautiful event. And it was if you're in Columbus or you know of a poet named Serious Ad, great poet. One of the people that, especially when I was starting, that I was I was able to like really see his work in kind of close proximity, and just a really, really good poet. But he had been really active on the scene years before I was on the poetry scene, and he had like a poetry CD. And it was like a really interesting, because we were at this award show in Akron, and he was like, you know, like he was on stage and he was talking about like he was like selling his poetry book, saying that like he wanted people, or not, he sell his poetry CD, and he was selling it for $2. And I'm thinking like, why would you sell something for $2? And so like he came to the table, and I was just like, yeah, I mean, of course I want to buy your poetry CD, but why is it only $2? Like, I would, it's a poetry CD. I would have bought, I don't know the going rate. And kids, if you're listening to this, you don't know what a CD is. So a CD is circle. You would put it inside. Actually, you would put it inside of your car, right? It would go inside of your car.
Some cars don't even have it anymore. Which is really annoying.
Ours doesn't have it.
It's actually really
You would just slide it inside of your car, and then your car would play music from this disc. So, I mean, I don't know, it's blowing your mind right now, but so essentially he was just like, well, the point isn't the $2, because I would have given you the poetry CD for free, because I just really want you to listen to my poems. I really want you to kind of like the break, because like there's other stuff that he's doing that is not necessarily selling the audio for the poems, that he views as more important, and he views as like gonna like push things other like in that direction. But he's like, if I give you something for free, then you don't value it like at all, right? Like something for free, we've all kind of been in that position where you like, if you're like going to a festival, if you're going somewhere and somebody just hands you something and you're like, oh, this is really cool, trust me, you'll like it. But if it's free, then it's really hard. Like you don't necessarily put a whole bunch of value on it. But even if you pay like a small amount, at the very least you paid that small amount, you know what I mean? At the very least, like there was something that you came out of pocket there, and maybe you'll give it an actual listen, or you'll pay attention to it a little bit therein. And I took that, and again, I don't think that I necessarily, I mean, there's probably things that I might sell for $2, but I don't know if I would necessarily, I don't know if I would ever sell a poetry CD, I mean, in 2024. But maybe I would, who knows? I mean, it depends on the circumstances, or like kind of the motive, or like how that happens. But it's just to say that yeah, like when the value is derived from something that has that little connectivity to the actual content itself, then I think it's like a little bit harder for people to really kind of latch on to the content that you're bringing forth. Just to say, like, I don't know that I would necessarily expect for that person who bought the CD because you're pushing a certain amount of donations over to this other organization or something like that, if that person is going to come back for your next poetry CD, if that person's going to, you know what I mean?
So
that was a long way say shout out to Serious Ad.
You worked through it.
You're out there, man.
Some other examples we gave too. So to show connections to identity, we mentioned, for instance, if you're really into like dog, like the example I gave is like, you know, if you had to put a book on your coffee table and you're about to have like a house party, like what's the book you want people to see on your coffee table? Like imagine it was a poetry book and things like that, because I think we often use we often use books, I think, as ways to demonstrate our identity. You know, you could think of like people riding on the subway, like people riding on the subway in like New York, you know, with the book out, people looking at the cover. You know, we are social creatures. You know, people are thinking about how do I want people to perceive me? Because there might be a book that I actually don't want people to see me reading, but there might also be a book that I do want people seeing me read. You know.
Yeah. Conversation starters.
You know, conversation starters, but also ways to connect with specific audiences and also ways to distance. You know, I also gave the example of like, if you think of like, just because we're nearing the election cycle, we're gonna see all kinds of symbolism associated with different sides of politics, and the goal of that is to simultaneously alienate, because some people are going to see the symbols and be like, no, that's not me, but also attract, because some people are going to see the symbols and be like, yes, that is me. And these people, and I think the more that we can kind of lean into those aspects, you know, with our collection, like some people have to look at our collection and be like, no, this is not for me, and some people have to look at our collection and be like, yes, this is for me, because I think if we apply too generally, then it's really hard to develop that sense of togetherness that I think is really important for something to grow, because there's almost that sense of I don't want to say like exclusivity, but like this sense of like you're on the inside. It's playing with the sense of like community and belonging. So what can I do to make people fit into that?
Yeah, and I also think there's like there can also be a sense of kind of what do they call it? Like hate watching, right? So like there is a dynamic where people that would disagree or maybe not like necessarily like the content you write about. Like I think we've referenced this on like podcasts before, but there's a Kanye quote. It says, "Everybody feels a way about Ye, but at least you feel something," and it's like that's the thing that you want to touch there. Like if you are just kind of in the middle and people don't really feel anything, like that's the worst position to be in. Like you want to have your the people that love you, that love your work, that will follow your work to the ends of the earth. But in order for you to really have that populace, have those people, it's like you have to have people that like that's going to breed people that do not like you, that, you know what I mean? Because it's like there's people that are on the other side of the spectrum for pretty much every thought line. Oh man, Kanye had another like an interview. This was like 15 years ago, and he was just like, as much as people like love Jesus, people also kill Jesus. It's just like, yeah, like that's like the visceral, but like what you see, like, you know, in that I don't know that there's gonna be a point in history where people are like, hey, like, who do you think, like, you know, do people still listen to Jesus? Who's Jesus? Like, people are gonna like at the very least it's gonna be a resonant kind of topic and tone, right? So which is just to say that like the idea that, you know, that you're positing that, like, you know, if you have it too much in the middle, like, you know, then you're not really generating an audience. You're just generating people that are willing to observe your work. Maybe like they're willing to like know that your work exists. But if people, I mean, you're gonna create people that don't like you, and you actually have to be fine with that. Like you have to be fine with that, because you're serving not them, you're serving somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I think we've seen that with diversity. There's some people that, like, I tell them that, hey, like, we're using poetry to sustain people, you know, creatively and financially. People hear the first part like, oh, the creative, oh, that's cool, and then people hear the financially part, they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah, money. You can't do art and money. You can't do that. These can't mix, you know.
Yeah. And then I just said, Mom, I'm going to do it. You don't control me anymore.
So I think the verses attracts people who are open to the idea of approaching art from also like a financial perspective in addition to the creative one, and don't necessarily see them as being at odds with one another.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Whereas some people do, and so cool. We can distance that. I think we talked about this before. This concept of like, who's also like the villain, like who's your writing against, because I think we often think about the one side about who is our writing for and how can I target them, but sometimes leading into the other side, like who is my writing not for and how can I make it really clear that I'm not for you. I think that's another strategy that can be really effective too. But going back to our central topic, so again, you have let's imagine you have poetry, let's imagine you have a poetry collection you have putting out. What can you do to demonstrate to others that your writing is a gift for them? I want to also just connect it to a marketing example. So one of my favorite marketers is Seth Godin. I really like Seth's approach. We've talked about him on the channel before. Seth is very, he's a marketer, but his approach to marketing is about change and inspiring change, the change people seek to make and helping people get that. It's not about the sale. It's really about how are you, removing a pain and helping people move closer to something that they want to become. So he has a book called Purple Cow, which basically, if you're not familiar with it, is this idea that as a kid, he was like driving through France. His family was taking a trip, and at first, he grew up in the city, so he sees like some cows in the field. He's like, oh wow, cows. But then over time, those cows become a lot more familiar, and you kind of stop caring because like, oh, it's another cow, it's another car. You stop paying attention to it. So then you like start thinking like, what if I had seen like a purple cow? Well, that would have broken the pattern, right? That's something really unusual, and that's also something that this gets back into the concept of being remarkable. We want work that can generate a remark from others, and so this is something that we want to be considering in our work. How can we create the purple cow? How can we create something that other people want to remark? And so one of the things that he did with Purple Cow was he actually, the first print run he did, the book came inside of a milk carton, like a literal milk carton that was like purple. It was like purple, like splotches, kind of like a cow's skin, and like he had all kinds of like little puns and things about like milk, but adapted to like writing and things like that and marketing. So, and that's how we mailed out the book. It's like you would order the book, and then like a week or two later, you would get this milk carton in the mail, and then the book would be inside. So that's really unusual, right? I mean, a lot of people. Yeah. It also takes a lot of work. He had to. I was listening to him talk about it. He's like, he couldn't get, because like, where are you gonna get the milk cartons? Like he couldn't just go to like regular, the cartons that sell it to like milk producers, because they're looking for different material, because like milk is wet and like there's like cleanliness things, and books are too dirty. So like a lot of companies wanted to work with him. So apparently like Epsom salts are sold in milk cartons. So that's like he worked with like one of their like suppliers for packaging. So that's how he did it. It's like it takes work. It takes a lot of effort to find the thing that's going to allow your work to stand out and be separate. Yeah. But what he noticed was that when people would get the books, when they would get these milk cartons, they would often display them. Like they would have it on their desks, they would have them on their tables. So like when people would come to their house, people would say, oh, that's interesting, look, there's this milk carton here. All of this to say, like, for our own work, if you have your poetry collection, what's something you can do that would get people to like not only display your book but want to display the book?
Yeah, something like, I think like when we're talking about conversation pieces, or like just pieces in your home. Actually, another kind of thought, we actually were just there a couple days ago, Portlock Manor. Really, really beautiful home. Really, really beautiful curated. What is
like studio?
Yeah, but just a really, really beautiful space that was coordinated I'm looking for I don't know why the word just exited me, but by Aziza, shout out to Aziza. But there whenever we would be there for like events and things like that, there was always like some very signature spaces and pieces and things like that people were always like looking to have like conversations around. And there's like some very strategic spaces on the walls where there was like excerpts from poems and things like that, that were always really cool because people could really sit around and have conversations around them, which is always like really exciting. And I think like things like that where you could have a space that, you know, is just like a home and it kind of serves as like kind of creative space, but because it's a creative space, you want to have things that really pop and things that are really interesting to artists. And so, which is again just kind of what you're saying as far as like, you know, somebody, you know, I could have a book, you know, on my coffee table, and that could be, you know, cool or, you know, whatever. But if I have a book that looks like a milk, like that's like encased in a milk carton and is on my kitchen table, it's like, oh, that's interesting, because it's like, no, is this new dynamic? It looks like milk, but it's actually like a poetry book that, you know, I can really, or it's a book that I can open up and I can explore.
So this really got me thinking, like, what are some other things that like poets could do if they have a collection, and right now all they have is the book, and they're like, okay, I want this book to, like, I think it could really benefit this group of people. How can I get it so that they even know that this book exists? 'Cause I think it is something that would make their lives better. And so again, we have the example of like, maybe there's things you could do in terms of the packaging that would be a little bit unique, and I know it's a little bit tricky with. So let's imagine, like, if you're going through a publisher, that might be something that's tricky, but maybe something potentially you could do with your publisher is you could buy copies of your book yourself. People could buy through you, and then you find, you know, a unique way to package it and send it to people, or like you find a unique way to include something with it. Delmar saying go on Ellen. I don't know about Ellen nowadays,
but isn't Ellen like isn't her show over now?
I mean, she did all that.
Some crazy
I
stuff.
Yeah.
Shout out to the survivors of Ellen.
But the sentiment, the idea.
Just walk onto the show just like you're like an audience member, and you just like, hey, I just got a book to sell.
I think this is where like things like swag come in. Like if you have like a T-shirt, or like some like limited edition run of something.
Something I think that like really kind of figuring out what your book is doing and what your book is like, not only just what your book is about, but like something like unique about your book that you can like hyperbolize and really exaggerate into like merch. Because I mean, I think everybody, like anybody can get like a T-shirt, you know, kind of done for quotes and stuff like that in their book, and that's not a bad. So anybody that's done that, it's not a bad idea. But it's just to say that like there's other concepts and stuff like that I think could be really cool. I know I think Jasmine Mans is like a really good example of this, like how like she built her brand, like from like poetry to buy weed from black women, because like she has like rolling papers that have like that like on them, and I'm like, that's like a very quick like oh, like this brand it does this is what is kind of encased in this brand, which is like, that's just brilliant. And again, she's done really large things over the years, so that's just kind of one example.
It's interesting you say that too, because she's almost approaching more. Has she made books too?
Pretty sure. I mean,
because that's another thing too, when you start thinking about the book as being part of the ecosystem, because then you can find other things that work into the, you know, wrapping. Yes. You know, like wrapping the book in like the rolling papers or something like that. You know what I mean? If it's connected, like, it gives you a lot more options when you have like a wider brand and it's not just a book. I think Delmar has mentioned something good here too. So if poets incorporate different skills they can create unique experience. This is really important. This ties into also our stream from last week when AJ Ane,
shout out to AJ Ane.
She was with us and she was talking about this. We were talking about just like taking on roles of like leadership and innovating and bringing unique perspectives to our work. Like, how can you take you know, just poetry as poetry is fine, but you know, if you really want to stand out, I think it's necessary to combine a unique lens and a unique framework. So, for instance, tying in poetry with theology, you know, or tying in poetry. All these examples, like poetry with music, and probably more specific than that, right? It probably have to be like a specific area of music. Poetry and videography, again, a specific area, you know.
Shout out to them. So like that's actually one of the things that I'm doing right now, and it's not necessarily with my poems yet, but I've been working with like a couple artists as far as like creating visuals for their work. And you know what, I think one of the things that I always think about is there is a dynamic where like artists can see the poem in their head when they're performing and things like that, and I'm like, but like that dimension of the work kind of never gets out. Like they never think to like really want to get that dimension of the work out. And I think about it because I'm like, man, that's like having visuals to kind of go with your work. It can be such a kind of sticking cultural dynamic, like to your work. I think about like artists, like not artists. Think about like musical artists. You know, like so many times like if they have a song that's doing really good, like that's the song they're like, okay, I gotta make a music video for. And like one of the reasons is that once you can have that visual stuck in your head as well, so like you have the audio, now you have the visual kind of stuck in your head, it, you know, it just makes that, you know, so much more resonant. And you can kind of get that extra edge to that creative I don't know, like that creative, right? So now you're like, oh, this person, I like this person's music, but now I kind of get this visual into their mind to how they visualize their music. So, yeah.
Another thing, so at Cave, in fact, we posted some clips from it. I haven't posted a full interview yet, but we had an interview with Ajibola Talasi, who won the Cave Canem Prize. So his book's coming out soon, which is exciting. Congratulations. But he was talking about one of the things he did with his collection was also just like community involvement. So for instance, he wasn't sure how to start his book, so what did he do? He put out a poll on his social media and just like, hey, here are 6 poems, which one of these should be the starter? So that's just one example, but finding collaborative ways where readers, and this is also just a great way for generating interest too, where readers, people that you intend to get your book, you know, whose hands you intend to get your book into, can be involved in your process, you know. And so then they can be like, oh yeah, this is a part, you know, I was a part of this, and in some small way, your book became my book. We collaborated on this to some degree. So I think, you know, it's a little bit less about what do people physically get from your book, but just having that kind of sense that like, okay, I'm invested in this book. I don't normally interact with poetry books at this sort of level. This is a unique experience for me. Let me buy, you know, this book. Another example that just came to mind, and I kind of just want to give lots of different examples because maybe it will help you think about for your own poetry collection about something that maybe you'll want to consider for your piece. I was thinking, like, imagine if you have a book with a bunch of, like, erasures. And what if you... I don't even know how you would do this, but, like, maybe, like, having, like a separate card with one of your pieces, and then people can make their own, like, erasures with it. Like, if you could, like, move, like, the slash lines around or something like that. And then, like, you could do, like, even, like, a little campaign, like, hey, make an erasure with my poem, send it my way, or something like that, you know, like, so you start like compiling, so then it becomes like a collaborative thing that people could send to. And obviously they could just do that with like a Sharpie or something like that, but it's different. Like if you could find a way to kind of manipulate it so they could, like, they have like 5 like slashes that they can move around on the sheet of paper or something, things like that, you know. How can you make it more of a collaborative, interactive experience?
I definitely, you know what, I think about, okay, so this is going to be also a reference that is like outside of poetry specifically, but this is okay. Just like years ago, Transformers. It was like the second Transformers came out, right? And there was this box set that it came in. In the box set was like Transformers 1 and Transformers 2 in the box set, right? But the box set was so cool because it was a Transformer. It was Optimus Prime's like head, and in order to get the DVDs out, you can have it standing up, so he's like standing up Optimus Prime. But in order to get the DVDs out, you had to regress the transformation until it's like just like a truck, like the front is just a truck, and then you can open up, and it's like you're opening up the hood to the thing, and it was so cool. And I'm like, I spent too much money on it. I spent too much money in an effort to get it. But it's like something like that was like really cool because it's on brand for what the content is. And like I know and they know that, you know, at best the thing that I'm getting is 4.5 to 5 hours worth of entertainment on these DVDs, but the experience and just kind of the cool factor of what is kind of how this thing is packaged got me to buy something that I could have bought at a very much lower, you know, price point, if it was just like that content. Sierra, I'm like, shout out to Sierra. Sierra, I'm gonna hit you up a little bit later, but I have an idea.
You're in trouble. Ooh.
You're not in trouble.
Are you in trouble? You're in trouble.
Nobody's in trouble. It's just, yeah.
Okay. Then we're saying it's smart to think of poets as pop stars. Think marketing strategies, big artists use, be feasible for yourself. I think the key thing with this too is that I think it's easy to fall into the trap where it kind of feels gimmicky, and we don't want it to be gimmicky. It has to be something that like actually contributes in some way, whether it's like appealing to people's, again, sense of belonging and community. You see this with like, you saw this with like Beyonce. This speaking of like pop stars, like Beyonce.
Beyonce.
If you're looking for like ideas about how to like focus on like,
shout out to Beyonce fans getting the Beyonce reference out of Jeff.
Yeah,
that's a win for you. Look, trust me.
She's super intentional, right?
Yeah.
So give her credit for that. But like in terms of getting her people to feel like they're part of something, you know?
Yeah.
You know, between the boxes, or like the wristbands and stuff like that. You know, like these are things that give that sort of sense. You know?
Yeah.
How can you give that sense of community? How can you? We talked about status. So maybe, for instance, when you're reading something, you want to appear. I think you see this a lot with poetry. I think because the majority of people don't necessarily read poetry in the U.S. It's more numbers than before, but let's be honest, like people.
Sierra, take it back. Please, I'm begging you, Sierra, take it back.
Besides how you're trying to stay married, I think poetry compared to other genres of writing, I think often has like kind of this level of like sophistication and like fanciness about it. And I think when you're actually in it, you're like, no, like, I mean, it certainly can have those things, but it definitely does not have to have those things either. But maybe you want to appeal to that sense of sophistication, especially like, for instance, maybe like a casual poetry reader, or maybe to someone that just like reads poetry like once a year, but they want to appear like sophisticated, so you might want to kind of appeal to that level, or like to give people something that, again, we gave the example of something that looks good to show that when you're reading on the subway, or it looks good on your bookshelf. But maybe it's also, there's other elements too. So maybe you're trying to appeal to people. Maybe you're really, really, really dedicated to craft. And so you're like, what, these poems I'm writing are for people who are hardcore poets that are really, really, really super interested in academia and craft, because they're viewing poetry as a way to move towards like education, or like to enhance their own writing and things like that, to stay informed in the field or the industry. So maybe you're appealing to that.
I think something that's interesting, because I think I was thinking about Beyonce as a brand, and kind of like what she did with a lot of this stuff. I think over the years, Beyonce's brand, or at least a part of Beyonce's brand, has been like surprise and shock, you know what I mean? And it's not in the same way that a lot of other people's are when it comes to like media or anything. They're like, oh, I want to do something crazy so that the media is completely in shock or anything like that. I think it's shock when it comes to craft, and so they're like, I think that like take for example I think it was the Beyonce album, or maybe no, it was 4. I think that's what the album is called, 4 maybe. But whatever. But it was essentially the album that she dropped overnight out of the complete blue. And I think that was like kind of the first one of those by an artist that large in at least a long time, where it was like Beyonce didn't give any clues or anything like that, unless you're part of the Beehive. Like, I have come to learn that the Beehive believes that they are clued in like this really weird interconnected way.
There's hints and
kind of, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Secrets,
the other day she was eating a McDonald's McGriddle, and that just let us know that McGriddles are on her mind. English muffins are on her mind. She's gonna do a song with an English artist. But it's just like, it's so. But I like, we're laughing at it, but I'm telling you, I live with a Beehive member. This is their processing. But yeah, no, it's just like, I think that like that was an album she dropped overnight, and she dropped like everything overnight. So she dropped all the visuals, and she dropped all the music overnight, and it was like almost like overwhelming, right? Because like, if you're a fan of Beyonce, it's like, you know, you're used to the typical album rollout. You're used to a single coming out, and maybe after the single comes out, and then you get a music video for the single, and then you get maybe another single, and then the music video for that single, and then the album comes out, and then once the album comes out, maybe you get a couple other music videos, depending on, you know, what is. So you're not necessarily expecting a music video for everything, right? So that's one thing. And then B, you're not expecting an entire album out of the clear blue. So I think that, you know, shout out to Beyonce fans. Shout out to Beyonce. We love Beyonce. I think that she kind of, that was like, that now was like kind of a part of the infrastructure. It's like, you're going to be shocked by something, you know what I mean? I don't really know what the Lemonade necessarily layout was. I don't think it, or a rollout was. I don't think it was exactly like, you know, this album overnight. Maybe it was. I can't really remember. But I do remember like people were shocked at the content of that album, because that was actually also following, you know, Jay-Z and Beyonce had the big blow up in the elevator with Solange and stuff like that. So they're like, all that had happened. So that was also a shock factor. I don't know if I would necessarily. I don't know the validity of that or how truthful, whatever that is, but it's just to say that like that was also kind of baked in. Now you had I would say you like Renaissance, and Renaissance that was a little bit more traditional when it comes to like, you know, things rolling out. I know like a lot about Beyonce. I live in the household. Trust me, I had to buy those boxes, man. But also like, okay, so something like that, because it was like, I think that with the boxes, it's like, I think there was this expectation, like we didn't know the things that were happening with the boxes, right? So like we knew like there was like a T-shirt that came in the box and an album, but like I thought like we didn't know that other thing, like what other things could come with it or whatever like that. Just to be clear with y'all, just a T-shirt in a box and a CD. So guess what? I paid that money for it. And then kind of the same thing when it came to this last album, because I think like it's Renaissance Act 2, but it's like this country motif, but it was like nobody was necessarily expecting that until the Super Bowl. Beyonce has this Verizon Super Bowl commercial, and then just at the end of the commercial, she's like, "Okay, drop the new music," and then like Beyonce's at the Super Bowl, mind you. So it's like in the commercial, she's like, "Man, like everybody's focused on the Super Bowl, but I know like a whole bunch of my fans down there are running to." So it's like there's a lot of things that are like really shocking, but they're shocking towards the craft. They're shocking, pushing you towards the music, as opposed to, I think a lot of people shock you to kind of bring you to the person, and then like eventually I'll have some music for you, but you know, it's shocking to kind of bring you to like the individual or the celebrity.
I think this also, I mean, there's things that Beyonce can obviously do because she's spent decades honing in on her people, you know.
What do you mean, her people?
Her cult. her dedicated fan base. You know, and most of us don't have that. So, like, for instance, she can get away with a box with a t-shirt and a CD.
That's true.
You know, I don't know if just like a box. Again, so like Beyonce can get away with a box and a CD. I don't think your average poet, in terms of like generating, you know, real interest in getting people really focused on your work, I don't know if that's gonna cut it. You know.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of some other things. Another just example of how you see this out in the other industries. There was a restaurant that opened in New York, and they didn't let anyone in for a month. It's like 2 weeks or a month. I forget the name of it. If you look it up online, you can probably find it. But this was their strategy. They wanted to create like a premier restaurant, you know, upper scale, fine dining experience. So what did they do? So they open the restaurant, but they don't let anyone in, and they cover all the windows. Like you get, like, everything's opaque. You can't actually see into the restaurant. You know, so people pass the restaurant, they see the restaurant's open, there's lights on, and they see a sign, but like no one's actually allowed in. So people walk past and like, what? Normally they wouldn't even care about the restaurant, right? But like, I can't go in the restaurant, so now I'm curious about it. And so then, after a month, then they finally opened, and then, you know, but like they, you know, create a wait list, like people are waiting for tables and stuff like that. So like there was already massive demand from the beginning. There's also the idea of
that's how Arby's started, and now look at them.
They have all the meats.
They do have all the meats. Big beef and cheddar. I
don't know how Arby's is still around, but they are. if you've eaten Arby's within the last 6 months,
and you're still with us.
I'll be generous. If you've eaten Arby's in the last 6 months, let us know. I have not.
I think it's probably been about 6 months.
It's been about
6, maybe 7 months.
Okay,
something like that.
Yeah.
I used to go hard for Arby's. I want to be clear about something. Arby's is not horrible.
It's
okay. So if you're watching this from the Arby's Corporation, used to be last year. Go see if you can get that job back. Let's see. Let's see if we can get some big beef and cheddars together. But like, okay, I want to be clear. I don't think Arby's is horrible. I do think that after some thought and some meditation, I'm like, I can make a lot of these sandwiches at home. Depends. Yeah, exactly. Depends on also the Jamocha shake. Let's not.
The what?
The Jamocha shake?
What the hell is that?
Oh, Jeff. Oh, yeah. Tell him about the Jamocha shakes, okay? Because Jeff doesn't understand.
What is a Jamocha?
It's a delicious shake.
So he's making it.
That shake is delicious. The Jamocha shake.
Why are you saying it like it's a thing?
It is a thing. It's a thing. That yes. The Jamocha shake, the jalapeno poppers, man. They had some stuff, man.
Anyway, so we're not paid by Arby's.
One of us isn't paid by Arby's. It's not doing his job.
We had this, like, Arby's keeps coming up. We had this, like, I feel like every like 4 months. It was our Arby's stream.
We gotta bring it back.
Go hard on Arby's.
Bring it back to our moral. Bring it back to our core. Our core audience started with Arby's eaters, and then
think just of, again, another example. And again, we're just kind of pointing out some examples to think about ways that you can connect your book with your audience. Another example was this is a fashion example. So these guys that started a clothing brand. I forget the name of the brand. You guys, Big Chef, where are you getting all these stories from? You don't have to believe them if you don't want. But they went to a convention. They had just launched their fashion brand, and they went to this convention for fashion, like where people could kind of like show off their wares, like to, you know, like your J.C. Penney's and your Macy's and like other like department stores and things. And so it was like a 3-day convention. And day one, they set up like a normal tent, and You know, just like all the other vendors. You know, so it's like nothing to separate them.
Yeah.
And no one really stopped by their tent. And they're like, you know what, this feels like a waste of time. Like, I don't feel like doing this. So then the second day, what they did was they set up their tent, but they put like a tarp over it so you couldn't actually go in. And so like the agents from like the department stores, they were like, stop by and be like, hey, like, what's going on in your tent? And like, sorry, we're not interested in you. It's like telling the department stores, like, we're not looking for you, we're looking for other people. And it's like the department, like, wait, why don't you want us? Like, what's wrong? You know, so people got like here, and some people were like, oh, you guys are like so arrogant. You know, like, you guys like, who are you? You guys are like no name people. But lo and behold, it started to like get like some traction, like, because like people started to see like, oh, like these guys, they're saying no to these people in front of everyone else. And it's, again, you isolate some people are like, you're arrogant, you're like, this isn't how you treat these people. But then other people are like, no, like, you're disrupting things.
Do you know what a 20v1 is?
I do not. It sounds like a battery.
Okay, no, it's this thing that they do it a lot on like YouTube and stuff like that. But essentially, these platforms, they'll
so like 20 people versus like one.
Yeah, like
okay.
One person will be like, you know, coming in there and they'll be like, you know, trying to position themselves like, I am the attractive person and who would date me and stuff like that. And they pop the balloons. I feel like that would be like a 20v1 if it was just like all the guys are just like, okay, like, this girl's really, really pretty, but she's probably gonna turn me down unless I turn her down first. And then she's really gonna be like, hey, what's going on with this guy? What's going on with this guy? He's alright.
You know?
Which is not a healthy way to organize yourself around relationships,
you know,
and I really hope for the healing of my community. But
there is this psychology aspect. Like, you see it with like, how did the brand Supreme get really big? Supreme got really big because they don't do this now because they switched owners, because the original owner sold, because why not? If you're ready to change industries and you've already made that much money, you're not passionate about it anymore, you know, whatever. But originally it was super exclusive stuff. Everything was a limited print run, like super limited print run, and that's how they thrived, because it was really hard to get. And then the new owners come in. What do? They make, you know, mass production. So, you know, it's super easy nowadays. If you want to buy a Supreme hoodie, it's not that hard to do. You know, it's like that sense of like exclusivity, and that might be something that connects us to poetry books. That might be something you could tap into, like limited print runs of books.
Yeah.
You know, what if you lean into that more hardcore? Because you're like, look, the average poetry book is selling less than 1,000 copies. Honestly, it's selling less than like 500 copies. So it's like, what if you lean into that more, to be like, okay, I want to appeal to like people's sense of having something that's exclusive and limited. You know, you see that with artists. They'll make limited runs of prints they make or something like that. It gets interesting with like the digital artists making limited runs. They're like, hey, here's this thing I printed on my computer, but I'm only going to print it 10 times or something like that, you know. But these are just some other another thing that you could be thinking about in terms of your own book, because when you make something exclusive, what are you giving to people? You're giving them a sense that they have something that is of value, because not many people can get it. You're special because you got it, and other people couldn't. And so I think it also kind of plays with people's sense of status.
Yeah.
The tricky thing about that is that I think at the early stage of your career, how do you demonstrate that this is limited and of value to people? Like, can you imagine like if Beyonce did like, yo, I'm making 10 copies of this CD? You know what I mean? Like how much that CD would like sell for, right?
Yeah.
But your average poet doesn't have that, you know, because that takes time to really cultivate.
Nipsey Hussle actually, rest in peace to Nipsey Hussle. Like a little while before, like a couple years before he ended up passing, I think he had an album, and I think he was selling them for like $1,000 like a copy. I can't remember like how many copies or anything like that he sold, but I just remember it being a statement of like, this is like art. This isn't just like, you know, throwaway music that I want you to just like kind of take and like listen to. Again, these are on CDs still, so kids, ask your parents about what CDs were. But yeah, they're all on CDs. But he was just like, this is art, and this is like something that I want you to really cherish and treasure. Because like, just imagine, we were talking about like Serious Ad, or he was selling it for $2. Imagine if you had bought a CD for $1,000, like, and where would you like? I absolutely clearly don't have one of those, but like, imagine like, okay, like how much care would you take to really kind of take care of something like that? And actually, like, he could, like, he had the connections in order to be able to do that, and you know what I mean, as far as like the people around him, or like the potential buyers. So yeah,
I know we've been talking about this for a while, so I want to get back to like real practical. Let's imagine we have a poetry book. Matthias, I'm going to lean into yours. So, because I know a lot of your poetry nowadays, you do a lot of persona around like biblical figures and something and things like that. Mm-hmm. So let's imagine that you had a poetry collection that you were putting out, just compiling all these like kind of like biblical persona poems. The chapbook or full length.
Can we do like another? Just because I don't want to give away some of the. Can we do another example?
Okay.
I just only because I do have ideas, but I don't want. I don't like.
Okay,
yeah.
For sure. Okay. Can I make a connection between? Your poetry keeps coming to mind. So like, let's imagine. Let's imagine that you had poems in like short film. Like let's say you had the series. I'm kind of thinking like Adrian. How do you pronounce his last name? He had that book about like boxing. Okay, so let's use that. So
okay.
like, let's imagine that you have a poetry collection about a sport.
Okay.
A specific sport. Okay. So all the poems in it are related to an individual sport. What are some things that you could do to give to your readers? So like, they would get the book and they would also feel like they're getting so much more from it. Okay.
If it was like a sports related book,
mm-hmm.
It depends on what. Maybe I guess. Because I think like that could go a couple different directions. Like, let's say if it was like a sports related book, I might like transition it into like a playbook almost, and so like kind of like even the design of the book felt like a playbook, felt like something that like maybe a coach or something like that would be walking around with.
I like that.
In that regard, that way it's related to the content, and you can also kind of open it up and kind of read it accordingly. Mm-hmm. That's just what comes to mind there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can see that. I'm thinking other ideas like what if your book came with like a signed card? Now naturally we're starting to talk about like expenses and things like that, but like what if it came in with like a relatively cheap. I know like I don't know much about sports cards, but apparently like they're graded. Like there's you have like your A-level card, like your AA card, and things like that. So like, what if you got like cheap ones that were signed or something like that, by people? Or like, what if you made like poet cards or like baseball cards or things like that? Yeah, like what if it came with a deck of like just like poets made into like.
I could see that. I feel like here's an idea that I'm not okay. Here's an idea that I'm not using. Okay,
hold on. So you could one thing you could do. You could take old poets who are public domain work, be in its public domain. So then you could like make it look real good, and then you could actually put like actual poems from them because it's public domain. So you can do whatever you want with them now, and things like that on there.
So I mean, one idea that I actually used this for the promotion of a show for the Nest years ago, but I essentially but just as an example, if I were to write for one of the things that I used to be really interested in as like when I was younger is like Yu-Gi-Oh, and so you could like kind of make like Yu-Gi-Oh cards and stuff like that, but like make them with like poets as opposed to naturally Yu-Gi-Oh monsters. Like you could say do the same thing kind of along the lines with like Pokemon, which Yu-Gi-Oh is pretty popular, but Pokemon was more popular, I would say. And I think maybe like kind of the difference that you could have there is that like as opposed to it being poets, you could have like poetry topics or concepts or things.
Nah, man,
like
you would have poets. So your Pokemon would be poets, and you give them weird moves and things like that.
Cry on stage.
I'm Big Punch. It's like, yeah, there's all kinds of things you could do. Oh, what if like you could like pay like, all right, take an investment. Pay a developer to make like a 8-bit video game. And
Ooh,
the only way,
okay.
but the only way actually you have to buy the book to get the access code to it or things like that. People mentioning baseball cards. Hang on. We're frozen. We are frozen. I'm just saying, I am Big Punch. I am Big Punch. Yo, this is like poet fighting game. So yeah, like baseball cards, exactly. Can you make up a word? Oh, that'd be cool. Like if you have poems that make up your own language. Like what if it came with like a dictionary, like a mini dictionary or something like that.
And then like if your book is like full of the words that like you're making up, like you sell the book and you have like a little dictionary accompaniment, and then that way, although it might make it kind of tedious to read the book, I think there might be also a cool experience to read the book. You gotta kind of walk that line, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that kind of reminds me, like, if for those of you who read, like, there's a book, The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. I mean, half the book is footnotes. It takes work.
Yeah.
You know, but in some ways that again leads into that sense of community, because some people aren't going to do it because like, I don't feel like doing this, but the people that are going to feel together like, oh, you read all the footnotes, I read all the footnotes, like, you know what I mean, like it ties in, you know. Other sports things, I think even in terms of design, like what if the envelopes that you sent the books in were like made out of like old like tickets to games or something like that. You know, hopefully this kind of just gets you thinking about, you know, what are some things I can do and create for my specific collection that could tie in. Like for instance, another thing, like I'm reading Courtney Faye Taylor's Concentrate. She does a lot of like, she was actually in my Kavakano group, which is cool. Shout out to Courtney. She does a lot of mixed media, at least her original book did. It's like, what if for every book you sell, you make the person like a custom collage? You know, takes work.
It does.
It takes work, but or what if like one thing you could streamline it? What if every collage has like the same pieces, but you organize them in a different way or something like that? You know what I mean? Just to kind of make it a little bit easier on your end, but things like that, you know, people are getting something original. Yeah, these are the things I'm thinking about. Again, how can you give to your reader? Because I think that's the thing that is what keeps some books from ever really finding their audience versus other books that are really able to kind of grow farther, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there's like, you know what, something so funny, so Harry Potter is if you guys haven't heard, Harry Potter kind of
I was talking about Harry Potter a little bit before you came, yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay. But Harry Potter is just naturally a world life phenomenon for like 20 years, right? Maybe more, but something like that. But it's just, I mean, naturally, people love Harry Potter. The thing is that magic wands, like even as like toys or something like that, have existed far before Harry Potter. That's like content existed. But right now, if somebody were to like be selling magic wands, I would think Harry Potter. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's like I actually for one of the short films that I'm working on that's in pre-production right now, I had to buy a magic wand, and when you just search magic wand on like on all Harry Potter based,
that gives me a great idea too. What if I were making Harry Potter, I would buy Thunderbolt temporary tattoos.
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure those exist.
I'm pretty sure they do too. So then they'd be included with every book. So then people could take the tattoo and put it on their bodies, and then people are like, oh, why do you have?
And that's like an advertisement for
you.
You
So this is so it shows people that like I'm in the group that read the book, and then I'm also showing off this is again just another idea.
What you should say, you should like sell say we're selling real magic wands, but they only work for wizards, and so then if the magic wand doesn't work, they just assume they're muggles, and then they're like, man, I mean, I know it costs a lot, but it's real magic. I'm not equipped. And then somebody else can be like, well, sorry, your magic wand is going to no use because I'm a wizard. I'm a wizard, so sorry for you, buddy.
Yeah, I was able to magic wand myself a Jamocha.
Yeah, that would be magic, man. That'd be the most magical one.
What is in it?
We're good. Okay, we're gonna take a diversus field trip at some point very soon. We should do it Friday before the show. Friday, me and Jeff, we're gonna have Jeff try a Jamocha shake. Sierra, you should come with us since you run it.
Oh, you don't know what's that? What color is it?
Like brown. This is where he's
a lot of that shit does. Like so many things can turn brown when you drink it. It's like,
Jeff.
But
trust me.
All right.
I think you'll like it.
All right. Anyways,
you weren't supposed to tell us, Sierra.
Yes.
Sierra, we weren't supposed to tell him. We just wanted him to find out.
Yes, sharing the good word.
We just wanted him to find out.
Sierra's doing the good work out here. All right. Any final thoughts for us, Matthias?
No. I just think like branding is important, and even if you are doing something small for your poetry book, like having something that accompanies like your collection, or having something that accompanies really anything that you're doing that complements it, will be good for the overall.
Yeah.
Because again, like just like when it comes to the example of the Harry Potter thing, I think that because Harry Potter was such a large phenomenon, they could have just been like, well, we're not going to sell magic wands because magic wands are already sold. But I'm like, if they decided like, no, we're going to sell our magic wands, and now I can't think of a magic wand without thinking of Harry Potter.
Yeah, like how you can take things and make them new, But again, the thing I really can't stress enough is that it's not about gimmicks. It's about things that actually are contributing to people in some way. It's like even in the case of the wands, it's a way for people to see it and think back to the book, but also to show others that, hey, this is how I identify. Yeah. And there's other levels too. So for instance, we talk a lot about belonging to communities, and that certainly is really powerful. But there's others too, like what if you treat the book as like an education tool? It's like I've been talking with a lot of poets on projects that relate to like mental health. So like what if you intersperse the book with like sections like dedicated like to research or something like that? So like as people read the book, they also come to a greater understanding of what mental health is, and like the issues and strategies for dealing. It's like education is another form of that value too.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you guys have thoughts, if you have a book, if you have used some strategies of your own that you found to be really helpful, let us know. Just again to highlight some things happening this week. Tomorrow on the channel, right around 8:30, we have Lo-Fi Poets. So again, we'll be writing some poems to prompts, listening to some beats. So hang out with us. That'll be 8:30 to 9 p.m. New York. In addition to that, Thursday we have Photo Thursday. So if you need a new headshot, or if you need a free recording of yourself reading a poem and you're in the Columbus area, we would love to assist you with that. We'll be downtown during your lunch break, 12 to 1:30 p.m. And then Friday, we have a special show. I don't even know this. We have a special show Friday.
We do have a special show, Zach, right?
Yeah, because Zach Hanna. Yeah. Those of you who know Zach will be.
Shout out to Zach Hanna.
I It's fixed. You should now hear the sound of polite clapping.
I do some polite clapping just on the side, just adjacently.
Jason, polite clapping. Zach Hannah's going to be featuring. Just could note, we're going to be at the big third way across the street, and there will be a cover charge that's $5 at the door. I think that's.
Oh, I have a feature on Saturday.
Oh, and Matthias has a feature on Saturday.
Yeah,
How about that?
Hold on, let me pull that up.
Where's this going to be?
I'm
Sierra
glad to
come
tell you.
Friday,
Let me
Deepen.
take a look.
Matthias's
Feature on Saturday will be For the Record, featuring myself as well as another poet, Marquita Byers.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah.
So that's nice. 1610 Oak Street, Columbus, Ohio 43205. Can I read the bio that I wrote? I think I'm really getting.
I'll allow this.
I'm really getting good at bios. Okay, I'm gonna read this bio to you guys. I'm gonna read the bio to you guys. Okay. So Matthias is a poet, photographer, and short filmmaker from Columbus, Ohio. His latest film, Unpack the Movie, was premiered at the Ohio History Connection during Cultural Conversations film presentation. He wants you to follow him at Maddie with the Cam and Maddie with the Cam Films on IG. But ultimately, Matthias is a time-traveling vigilante from the past because the future Matthias invented time travel but knew that the past version of Matthias could absolutely do a backflip once, and he is the one who should be fighting the crime. The real reason he's here is because historical records show that a horrible space anomaly is set to destroy the planet, and it opens up in the middle of this room at the end of this sentence. And if we're still alive, then that means Matthias has already fought the alternative reality Benjamin Franklin to quiet the chiming of the infinity bell and resolve the quantum equation, bringing harmony to the timeline. In celebration of this, he will do poems.
I fixed this button for you.
There we go.
Give it a minute.
What is a... Wow! I was really proud of that. That's my favorite. That's my favorite bio that I've ever written myself ever. I've never written a bio as good as that. So shout out to me. But yeah, you guys should come. It's gonna be.
What time is it?
It will be.
Is it before 8? It's gonna be right at 8.
It's 8 to 10. Why, you have a thing at 8?
I have to pick up Kathy at the airport.
Oh, you had to pick up Kathy at the
Kathy's
airport.
out of town.
Oh, well, shout out to Kathy.
I want to be there though.
That's all good. I mean, things happen.
We'll see We'll see how it is on Saturday.
We'll see what pans out.
All right. On that note, lots of things happening. Stay in touch, guys. Once more, my name is Jeff.
I'm Matthias.
You've been watching Diversus Live. We'll be back on Tuesday, right around 9:30 p.m. with more. You guys take care. Have a good day. Have a good night. Have a good afternoon.